Big John here, back for part two of the radio show. And just thought I'd come back and talk to you guys about a few things. I'm just going to be on here by myself this time. Hope you guys enjoyed Derek on the first radio show. Great friend of mine. We worked together a few years ago doing some very vaguely described security type activities. No, it wasn't anything special. We just did some security work in an apartment complex in the bad side of town, and just had to deal with a lot of very. It was like, I would describe it as mild police work. Just kind of, we dealt with a lot of the more mild issues. There was a few that I wouldn't maybe describe as mild at sometimes, but mostly it was just some pretty mild stuff. But it was an interesting experience, and had a great time working with him and all the other guys, but we ended up. But he's the only one from that experience that I still stay in contact with. But he's something else. Has some pretty funny stories too. I really love hearing his stories, and you haven't even heard the half of them. He has lots more stories that I will probably try to convince him to tell you guys on other future radio shows. I'll probably try to get him on for the next one. So he's game to do it. So we'll probably make that happen. But I just thought I would just tell you guys about a few things. I know there's lots of questions that you guys have asked me on YouTube and stuff like that. I try to get around and answer some of those, especially on the Hickok 45 and Son channel. But I'd rather just answer some of these questions in the radio show. I'm not going to get around and answer absolutely everyone's question in the comments, but I will answer some, as I, see fit, I guess. But yeah, I'll try to answer the questions on there if I can. But most of them I'd like to just answer here. So just, if you think of a question that you want to ask about something, I encourage you to listen to the radio shows first, because I'll answer a lot of questions there. So first, one question I get a lot is about, how did I get into guns? Which, of course, that should be kind of obvious. My as you may or may not know, my dad likes guns, and he got me into them at a pretty young age, I'll say for sure. But more specifically, I would say that first of all, I received a gun for my first birthday. Now, not when I turned 1 year old, literally my birthday, the day I was born, the first day of my birth. I had a gun. My dad went and bought me one that day, and it was a Remington, what's the model number on that thing? I ought to kick myself for not remembering the model number on that thing, but it was a Remington pump action shotgun, 22 long rifle. I said shotgun, but 22 long rifle. But great gun. Still have it today, obviously. That wasn't a gun I was going to sell or trade or anything. Of course, I'll keep that forever. You have to with guns like that. It's a special gun. But that was my first gun, and I am 99.9% sure that was the very first gun I ever fired. I've seen pictures of me when I was a little kid of where I couldn't even shoulder the gun. I had to just kind of wrap my arm around it, and Dad kind of held me in his lap and put the stock against his shoulder, and I was able to pull the trigger, and I'm sure he kind of helped me aim it at some steel targets, so I would feel like I hit something. But that was probably around 3 years old, something like that, because I remember when I was a kid, I used to keep track of these things for some reason. I don't know why, but I remember it was always in my head growing up that I shot my first gun at 3, and I shot my first rifle at 4. For some reason, that's always stuck with me. So I think that's probably true, because that always stuck with me, and I remembered that. But I do know that was the very first gun I ever shot was that pump action Remington 22 long rifle that you probably have seen in a video. I think we've done at least one video with it. But that was the first gun, and like I said, I remembered it as being when I was 3 years old. I'm sure I was, it was late into my threes, but I was 3. And some people might be a little bit offended by that almost. They don't understand guns. Probably no one listening to this radio show, but but it's a totally safe situation, especially with a rifle. You know, I mean, I was in my dad's lap. He basically was holding the gun. Technically, he shot the gun. I mean, I pulled the trigger. I held onto it and pulled the trigger. But I mean, he was in total control of the gun. I mean, it could not be any less safe. I mean, there was no way. Even if I wanted to do something unsafe with the gun, there was no way that I could have. So, you know, to the people out there that, like I said, aren't even listening to this radio show that think that is just a horrible thing, you know, just try to think about it a little bit more realistically. And then at some point, based on my memory, when I was 4 years old, was when I fired my first centerfire gun, and that was an Uzi, which I always tell people that because it's kind of crazy. The very first centerfire gun I ever fired was a fully automatic Uzi, because dad had bought one, you know, legally, of course, went through all the paperwork and all that back in sometime in the mid '80s, I think, something like that. And of course, it doesn't have it anymore. But that was, ironically, it sounds crazy. Now, of course, I didn't shoot it in full auto, you know, when I was 4 years old. But it sounds crazy that I shot an Uzi as my first centerfire rifle. But really, if you're familiar with the Uzi, it was actually a great choice. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was an Uzi and some, you know, submachine gun. Just the fact that it was, one, really heavy. So shooting a 9mm out of an Uzi is like, I mean, no recoil whatsoever, and semi-automatic especially. And of course, it's select fire, so I fired it in semi-automatic, and the dad still, I'm sure, helped me hold it and everything when I was that young. But it was a great gun for me to learn on, because, and also the stock on it is so short when it's folded out, so it was perfect size gun for me. It was really heavy. So that was actually ended up being a great gun to learn on. But it's kind of funny looking back on it that the Uzi was the first gun the first centerfire rifle that I shot. And then I remember as I got a little bit older, 5, 6, 7, you know, something like that, then Dad would say, "Okay, there's 3 rounds left in the magazine. You know, I'll put it on full auto for you. Just, you know, be real careful." And he'd watch me real close. And so occasionally he would let me fire a 3-round burst or a 5-round burst, you know, or something like that, you know, and that was really exciting. I remember at the time when I was a kid, of course. But yeah, so that was the first gun I shot, and then the first centerfire, and from then on I was hooked. You know, I spent so much time. You know, our dad was a teacher. He was off in the summer, and we had the same schedule, so we shot all the time. We had something out shooting. We were always hiking around on the farm and shooting guns, and just, I was just immersed in it, because he was too. He was even competing back in those early days when I was growing up. So he was always shooting and, you know, always selling and trading, and there were always new guns and different things coming in and out that we got to shoot, and it was a lot of fun. So I grew up just immersed in the hobby, almost as much as you could be, except for the fact that I never shot any competition growing up. Other than that, it's just a hobby shooter. I was very immersed in it. But then as I got older, I want to say probably maybe around 14, 15, something like that, people started to realize that I was getting very tall, and I started playing basketball, and that kind of became my life. And you know, I kind of look back sometimes on those days and regret, because I didn't really shoot a lot. You know, I didn't. I still just spent just as much time with my dad as I did before, but it was more you know, about basketball and stuff, because he played basketball too, so he was able to help me with that a lot and that kind of thing. But it was like I couldn't focus on more than one thing at a time or something, because I didn't really shoot much. There was a period there about 4 or 5 years where I really just I wasn't really interested in guns at all. I was focused on basketball and school and all that kind of stuff. So there was kind of a black hole almost in my gun gun hobby life, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And but what brought me out of the black hole, interestingly enough, which lasted for about 4 or 5 years, I would say, something like that, was some friends of mine close to the end of my senior year in high school. I had some great friends I still have today that we hung out a lot, you know, toward the end of my senior year in high school. And they found out that I was interested in guns, and were surprised by how much I knew about them. They had known me for a while and didn't even realize that I had grown up with guns and had so much experience with them, and was so just so knowledgeable about them. At least, you know, especially compared to them who didn't really have experience with guns. And so they would ask me all these questions, and they were just surprised at like how, to what extent I was able to answer them. Um, like, because like I said, they didn't really know anything, you know. So to them, I was like a super genius about guns, you know. And so that kind of almost sparked my interest back into guns, because I didn't realize how excited other people were about them, and it got me re-excited about guns. So then I kind of rekindled my love for getting out there and shooting and all that. And then not too long after that time is when I turned 18. So all that happened right before I turned 18, and then I kind of realized, hey, I'm old enough to buy my own gun. So I did. I went to a gun show and I said, I'm gonna buy a gun, you know. And I kind of decided I wanted a shotgun for my first gun. And I did. Sure enough, I found an old Remington 870 that I just kind of fell in love with. And it had, it was all wood and steel. Had the, you know, that fore end where it's it's wood, but it's kind of ribbed looking. And I always liked those from seeing them in movies. And I even negotiated the guy down, you know, on it, you know, a little bit, and it was a great experience. And of course, still have that gun today, and that was my very first gun. And you may have seen that in some of the videos. It's just the all wood and steel Remington 870. Some of the older videos, it's been used, I think. So yeah, I bought my first gun, and that summer, you know, we would shoot some. You know, my friends that I was telling you about, you know, we'd shoot some, and it was great. I just got back into it, you know, full fledged. And then now we're getting up into part of the origin story of how Hickok 45 came to be. And then I went off to college, and I had never realized how unique of a thing it was to, one, have that much grow up on that kind of property that I did, and also to have a shooting range, a good shooting range at that, right outside my window. Literally, there have been times where I've fired a gun from my bedroom out the window onto the shooting range, and that it wasn't unsafe at all, because my bedroom pointed right at the shooting range. I mean, literally a shooting range right outside my bedroom. And I did not realize how unusual of a thing that was until I moved away from home for the first time when I went to college. Because I was in school out in East Tennessee. It was far enough away where I couldn't just easily just drive down for the weekend, you know, real quick. I did sometimes, but it was very rare. And I lived in an apartment, first I lived in a dorm for the first year, and the first year I was in college, that would have been, let's see, 07, 08. Then I didn't really, that's not really when it started happening yet. I would talk with people about guns. There were people that knew that I was into guns. That conversation came up some. But it didn't really start to click until the next year when I was in college. And then that summer, you know, I of course shot a lot and stuff with my friends, and we all, like a bunch of my friends, we all worked together at the same place. So, you know, we would get off, and you know, and sometimes, you know, Dad would let us come over and we'd shoot at the range there at the house. If not, we had one of my friends had some land. We'd go down there and shoot and stuff. You know, had a lot of fun the summer. And then, so I go to college the second year. This would have been 08, 09. And there was a guy that was on the basketball team that, it was a great guy. Ironically, he was one of my best friends on the team. And he was the best player on the team. And I was one of the worst probably at the time, because I was a young guy. I'm not going to say I was the worst necessarily, but I was young. I redshirted my first year. And it was actually a really good program, you know, and I was just happy to be a part of it, you know. And I was a contender in practice, but I didn't really get in the games yet and everything. So I was one of the lower men on the totem pole. But he was a great guy. He just dominated our league. He was an amazing basketball player, but he was also a big time gun nut. So we got to talking about guns a lot. and we were always, you know, talking about different guns, and he was telling me about stuff because he grew up out in the country too. And then I started just really missing it. You know, I was living in an apartment. I can't remember if I said that or not, but I was living this time. I was in an apartment instead of a dorm, and I just really started to be able to appreciate how neat it was to be able to just go outside and shoot whenever you wanted to. Because now I actually had some of my own guns. Now I couldn't have had the guns, of course, in the dorm room, for obvious reasons. But when I had the apartment, this is part of why I think I was able to appreciate it more. It's because I had my own guns in the apartment. At first, you know, I had the shotgun, and I think I brought my 22 Marlin lever action, which I got for Christmas when I was 10. So I had a couple of guns out there, and after, you know, I got to know this guy on the team that was really into guns, I started trying to think, oh man, we have to find a place to shoot around here. And I just thought it would be easy, and man, it took me forever. It was so hard to find a place to shoot. And eventually I ended up finding a place out there to shoot, but it wasn't till later, till a while later. And that was really frustrating. So I found myself turning to YouTube, just looking up things about guns, because my basketball career at that time was sort of slipping. There was a few of things that there was almost like a perfect storm that kind of happened, and it kind of caused me to kind of lose touch with my basketball career. It was very promising at one time, but I just kind of lost touch with it. I just lost interest. It just didn't do it for me anymore. And I started to become kind of the gun guy on the basketball team, and I started gravitating more just towards my interest in firearms, and almost away from basketball ever so slightly. So I found myself getting on YouTube back in the early days of YouTube and just looking up stuff about guns. You know, I was living vicariously through them by getting to watch people shoot guns on YouTube. And at that time, there wasn't much gun stuff on YouTube, if you guys remember. And it was just mainly just be some guys like, hey, check this out, and then just, you know, just shooting a gun into the woods or something. You know, there was no really gun reviews too much that I saw. You know, I didn't really see any of that really. I think there might have been some, you know, like in those days, but I didn't really see much. So I was watching gun videos on YouTube a lot when I should have been studying. And I would talk to, because Dad and I have always been close, and I would talk to him every day on the phone, just about. Maybe not every day, but very often. Every other day or so, we would talk on the phone a lot. And we got to talking about, you know, how I was telling him how I was seeing all these YouTube videos, you know, all these people shooting guns, and how stupid a lot of them were, and how just like these idiots on there that like they're just trying to show off that they have some gun. They don't even know what they're talking about or what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of clicked, and I was thinking, you know, I was like, hey Dad, I was like, you should do this. You ought to put some stuff up there, you know, just for the fun of it. And he had already put some videos on YouTube at this point. But at the time, YouTube was just seen as like, you know, just something just to, I don't know, throw up some family video for your family to log on and get to see it, or just some crazy cat video. You know, there was nothing really serious up there. At least there wasn't much up there that was serious. And at the time, I was thinking, hey, you ought to put some videos up there of the guns and actually say some stuff about them. Show, like, you know, just show them actually, you know, being shot correctly. You know, I mean, really, what I was thinking was just get on YouTube and just have a camera and just show you like just shooting some targets, even if you don't say anything about the gun at all, because that would be better than what I've seen on there. Most of the videos of people shooting was from like a side angle or something like that. You know, you couldn't actually see the gun being fired and what it was being what it was hitting at the same time. So, you know, we talked about that, and I was like, okay, yeah, you know, maybe I'll do that, you know, and then he did a few videos. He had posted the I call them the yellow shirt videos, which like the first few videos, the 44 Magnum. Let's see, Glock 19. No, Glock 19 wasn't one of them. See, 44 mag. I think the Glock 23 was one, and then the Bushmaster video. There might have been another one, I can't remember, but he did kind of all those at the same time, maybe even on the same day. And I remember, he told me that he posted them, and I went and looked at them. And I remember my thoughts were, oh yeah, that's pretty good. That's about what I was thinking, except I think you talk too much. I think you talk too much in those videos, which is kind of funny now because if you go back and watch those, they're like a minute and a half long, but I remember that was my reaction. And one part just realized I left out of the story was that part of where I got the idea from, I kind of put two and two together from my watching the YouTube videos of people shooting guns on YouTube. And then the other part of the where the idea came from was that Dad was, and I think he had done this before, or maybe not, I can't remember. But anyways, at this time, Dad was making these videos for the students in his class about, they were reading the book Shane, which is also a movie, the Western. And of course there's guns in the book and all that. It takes place in the Wild West back in the 1800s. So Dad, being the Wild West guns aficionado that he is, he decided to make a video for his students talking about the guns and kind of just showing them and giving some information about them, really kind of like what we do now. And he sent it to me just to see, so I see what I thought, And I was kind of thinking, I was like, hey, need to do this on YouTube. This is way better than anything I've ever seen on YouTube. You ought to put it on there, So it was kind of a perfect storm, Dad had the right idea when it came to, the instruction. He had all the skills and all the resources to do all that. And then I kind of saw YouTube and kind of realized, hey, instead of just making that stuff for your kids, it's like, how about you take all that and put it on YouTube, So that's basically what happened. And he started posting some videos on YouTube. And at first, while I was still in college, I, like I said, on the very first ones that he showed me, I thought that he talked too much, which was kind of funny. And then he did a few more. And then I remember that first Glock 19 video, I was actually home for that one. I actually pushed the button on the camera to turn it on and turn it off, or at least to turn it off, I remember. And I was just kind of standing there, and I remember thinking, yeah, that's pretty good, And and then after some of them had been up there, I would just vigorously check them out. Whenever I was in college, I should have been studying, of course, but I would spend a lot of time on YouTube, and I would just watch the videos, and I would read all the comments, and I was starting to notice that, hey, people are kind of liking these, that's kind of interesting. And but also kind of expected, because there was nothing that I had seen up there that was anything like that, where someone was actually had experience and was talking about the guns and showing them being fired, based on what I had seen on the internet at the time. Now, I think there were, just to be fair, I think that there were some videos on there on YouTube at the time from some firearms reviewers that are still around today that were doing something like that, but I hadn't seen them. I didn't know anything about them, and wasn't aware that anything like that was being done, because most of the videos that I saw was just stupid stuff. Because that's what 90% of all the gun videos on YouTube were at the time. Just really stupid. Just, hey, look at this, Bill. And bam, just shooting a gun, and like clearly doesn't know what they're doing or have anything interesting to say about it. So at the time, that was really cool. It was different, and so I started to notice that. And then some unrelated events kind of made me decide that, you know what, maybe college isn't for me. So so I dropped out and moved back home. And I wish I could remember exactly around the time what video that would have been. Well, it would have been about May of, May of 2009, I believe, something like that. And so I moved back home, and that was during the worst part of the economy. Not that it really is any excuse. I was just I was a lazy, slacker, I guess, at that time, because I'd had all these ideas about how I was gonna have this big basketball career, and I could have, honestly. I mean, at times I showed that I could have, but then it's kind of lost my interest in it. Just kind of realized it just wasn't for me. And I came back home, and then it was like, was I had no life purpose anymore. I was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. So I basically just kind of shut down mentally and just didn't want to do anything. I just stayed at home and was just happy to live at home, and that's something I'll get into later. Some more like philosophy stuff about that and what I've learned from that experience and where I am now. And I'll get into that some other time. But so basically, I moved back home and I had nothing to do, and all I did was just help Dad with the YouTube videos. So all I did was sit around and just think of ideas about that, brainstorm about it. We constantly have conversations about it, talk about like what should we do next, what kind of video should we do, all that kind of stuff. And I remember that first summer after I had moved home, that was when the Hickok 45 thing just really took off. I mean, literally all summer, all we did was think about that, talk about that, work on that, make videos, and that was just a huge summer for me, because I was really, looking back, at least at the time, it was just for fun, because I didn't have anything else to do, and Dad just always shot, so it was a hobby for him, and a hobby for me too. But since I didn't have anything else to work on, it was just a great creative outlet for me, and so I felt like even in those early days, we really complemented each other really well. Dad was the guy that he had the hard concrete knowledge and the experience, and then I was the one that kind of came up with some of the more wilder, out there kind of ideas and the philosophies about how we wanted to do it. And what's interesting is when it came to how we wanted to go about this project, even before it really started to take off, and before we even knew anything about the whole YouTube partnership thing, we really just agreed naturally on a lot of things about how we wanted to do it, which I find really interesting. But so that was basically how we got into it, and that went on of me not really having anything to do other than just working on the YouTube for way longer than it should have. But the whole time I was thinking that I was wasting my time, but it really ended up not being a waste of time, because now this is all I do, and I have my own house and all that kind of stuff. So it ended up being a great thing. It's interesting how something can seem at the time like it's a negative experience, but it turns into something positive. It's just a crazy experience. I really felt like I was just wasting my life away doing nothing that was worthwhile, and I just the Hickok 45 thing was just a kind of a creative outlet and a project for me to work on while I just came to terms with the fact that I wasn't really going to do anything. But I did, ironically, end up getting kind of motivated to do something even before I realized that it was really taking off. And, I went back to college about a year or so into it after that. And I was going to school for criminal justice, and I thought I wanted to be a police officer at the time. And then I dropped out of school for criminal justice because I thought maybe it would be better if I got some experience, because that seems to be important. I thought that it was important to have experience if you wanted to get a job as a police officer, at the time at least. And I started working security, doing some different stuff like that. I did apartment complexes, nightclubs, did a government installation also at one time, and I thought that would help me get a job as a police officer, having that real experience out there. But from talking to other guys that have been working security for 10, 15 years and just had insane experiences. I talked to guys that have been working these nightclubs for decades, and some of them, they've been shot, they've shot people, they've been in just multiple shootouts. It's just insane when you talk to these people, how much people who have worked nightclub security in these bad areas for decades, they have stories you would not believe. And they have been, a lot of them, now some of them actually have become Metro officers, but it's usually the younger guys. But the guys that have really been out there in the trenches for years and years and years, they've told me so many times that they have tried to get on with Metro for years, and they get turned down. And that was just insane to me. These guys have an enormous amount of experience, but for some reason, Metro is just not interested in them. And I kind of realized I was wasting my time as far as that goes. But then the YouTube thing got to the point where I was able just to do that. That was all I had to do. So that's where I am now. I just do this full time basically. But it's just been amazing. It's just been an amazing ride, really. Going from, I remember when we first became YouTube partners, we just kind of laughed at it like it was a joke, but we've been able to actually, I've been able to live off of it. We're not getting rich or anything, but it's nice that we've been able to make it a full-time income, which enables us to put a lot more work into it, because it may not look like it on the surface, but we do put a lot of work into it. Dad spends hours and hours and hours every day answering mail, and doing all that stuff, which I just, it's just amazing that he is able to do that. And we since we don't edit the videos, we have to put a lot into our prep work, because once we get rolling on the video, we just go with it, and that's just a style that I really like. It's not because I can't edit the videos, because I'm not capable of it, or I don't know how, and we just do it the easy way. I honestly believe that is I'm not going to say it's a better way to do it, but it's my preferred way of doing it, because the way I look at it is, it's YouTube, it's the internet, it's not TV. If people are coming to our videos, I have the assumption that they are coming to our videos because they prefer to get their information from the internet than from the TV. And it doesn't make sense to me why I would want to make the videos look like TV, because I think people largely come to the internet because they don't like what they're getting on TV. So I don't want to give them the same thing that they get on TV on the internet. So that's just my simple logic as to why that we do it that way. And Dad prefers to do it that way also. So that's something that we're in total agreement on. But I kind of got rambling there a little bit on the story, but that's kind of it in a nutshell, basically. I grew up shooting guns, had the little period where I didn't very much, got back into it because of some friends, went to college, realized how I was taking for granted the fact that there was a shooting range right outside. We talked on the phone, me and Dad, about doing the videos, and we both kind of agreed that it would be kind of a cool thing to do. And he started doing it by himself at first, and then I dropped out. And when I dropped out, I just, that's all I did was just work on that. It was just come up with ideas. We would brainstorm. We'd sit around for hours and talk about video ideas and all that. And and the rest is history. Did some little odd jobs here and there along the way, and eventually ended up just being what I do. So yeah, it's been great. It's a really weird world. Sometimes I pinch myself every now and then. I don't literally, but metaphorically, I pinch myself, and I think, is this real? Is this real life? Like when I was growing up, I never would have guessed that I would have been doing something like this. I just never would have guessed, and I try not to take it for granted. You know, I feel like there were some periods where maybe I did take it for granted, but I don't now. I definitely do not now. I mean, it is. I mean, I'm just honored to be able to have the ability to do something like this. I mean, it's just amazing, and I can't believe that you guys actually watch them. That's the most amazing part. But anyways, that's not a topic that I can even cover in one radio show, honestly. So apologize for getting so long on that, but it's been crazy, you know, and that's a story that will kind of develop as my radio shows go on. Because I'm not exactly the most eloquent speaker, so that's something that you'll kind of have to gather in bits and pieces probably throughout the radio shows. But some other things I want to talk about was I know some of you guys saw the video that me and Dad did together with the 300 Blackout pistol, which by the way is just an awesome gun. I mean, I love that Sig came out with that arm brace. You know, I mean that's just genius. I love that there's companies now that are coming out with these loopholes to kind of get around some of the insane gun laws that we have to deal with. And it's just great. And when I say loopholes, I mean, you know, they're legal. It's not like it's a way for you to break the law in a sneaky way. I mean, it's legal, just like the slide fire stocks. They've actually come up with ways to get around some of these crazy laws, and it'd be totally legal. You know, you don't have to worry about it. And that arm brace, it's not perfect, obviously. And a real SBR would be better. You know, I don't think anyone would argue that. But you know, to get an SBR, you have to go through a lot of stuff. I mean, you gotta pay the tax stamp, you gotta super extensive background checks, you gotta wait a long time, and they're really expensive. And then you got all these issues where you gotta be careful about, you know, you take it out of state, you know, and if you use it for home defense, is that gonna look bad in court because it's some kind of special NFA item, and it's just a mess, you know. And it's almost not worth it, you know. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm not interested in just getting just some kind of standard SBR, you know, short barrel AR-15. That is not worth it for me. If I were to go through the SBR route, it's going to be something special. It's going to be something unique, you know, like a sawed-off shotgun that's the size of a handgun, you know, something crazy, you know, to really make it worth it. But it's just crazy. But now that the Sig brace is out, I mean, it really answers a lot of the problems with that. It's like I said, it's not perfect. It's still kind of short, but it works. You know, I mean, it works. It's not bad. As tall as I am, 6'8", I still found that I was able to shoot it like a rifle. You know, and accidentally hit the pig, which I don't know if you guys saw that or not. But of course, we don't ever shoot the animals with rifles, with rifle cartridge. But for some reason I thought that it would shoot really high. I don't know why, but I was aiming really low and hit the pig, but it didn't damage it because those pigs are a little bit harder steel than the others, and it didn't damage it, so it's still good. And I eventually walked them up and got to the red plate, but I felt like I could shoot it just as well, almost as a standard full-size rifle. So I just think those things are great, and I'm definitely going to be trying to get one at some point for sure. Except probably I'll probably go with a AR pistol and 223 5.56 because I like the Blackout. I really do. I think it's a really neat cartridge, a great concept, but I'm not really interested in having any guns that are oddball calibers because I'm not going to want to shoot them as often. Now, if Blackout becomes more available and it's like buying 223, then yeah, I would love to have a Blackout. But right now, I'm not as interested in one because I like to own guns that I can buy ammo for cheap. So that's kind of my thinking on it. But if you guys read the comments, of course, people are saying all kinds of things about how I looked like a hippie or a Viking or from Sons of Anarchy or Thor and all these kind of things, which, you know, it's just all in good fun, you know. But that is one thing that's frustrating sometimes about having long hair is because people, especially the hippie, with the other stuff, you know, I don't really mind. People are just joking around, but one thing that is frustrating is that people will think that you're a hippie because you have long hair. And I've had experiences where I go into a gun shop and people, just assume that, of course, I don't know anything. Oh, look at this hippie coming into the gun shop. And but then again, I don't really care either. To me, it's kind of funny almost that people, they can't think outside the box enough to where they see someone with long hair and, oh, they have to be this certain way because they look this certain way. And we're all guilty of it. I make those kind of judgments too sometimes about people. But it's just, the thing is, you have to remember, is just because someone looks a certain way, it doesn't mean that they have to have certain political or social beliefs. If social beliefs is even a thing, but you get what I'm saying. And most of the people, I think, that think that I'm a hippie because I have long hair have probably never actually met a hippie. There's a lot of people who look like hippies to people who have never met a real hippie. But if you ever meet a real hippie, like living on a commune, then you won't mistake what a real hippie is ever again. And I've actually met some of them, and I'll tell you what, some of the nicest people I've ever met. I mean, you could call them all kinds of names to their face, and they would just say something like, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I love you all the same, or something crazy like that. I mean, they're like the Amish almost. They don't, there's no negativity about them whatsoever, so it's hard to hate them. I mean, I don't go along with all their beliefs, but I mean, come on. I mean, they go out and try to get away from society, and live how they want to live. Like, who can fault them for that? I mean, I honestly have respect for them because they actually, the real ones, they actually do what they believe in, and they don't care who knows it. So, that's something that I'm not crazy about, is people throwing around the hippie thing like it's some negative thing. Oh man, he's a stupid hippie. But usually the people they're really talking about aren't even actually hippies. So just put that in perspective just a little bit. But one thing, speaking of hippies, I guess, I don't know, there are actually hippies out there that like guns, and then I'll tell you that for sure. But one thing but first I'll start by telling you this story, which I thought was kind of funny. I was at a gas station one night, and I was getting something to drink, and I went up to the counter, and I had to show my ID for this drink for some reason, and I pulled out my ID. Well, my driver's license, when I had it renewed, it got lost in the mail. So the one I have is expired, even though it's not expired. It's just that the copy of the driver's license I have is old. So whenever I buy something or go somewhere where I need to show my ID, I'll pull that one out first. And my care permit is not expired. My care permit is new. I actually renewed it recently, and that one did come in the mail. So when I use my ID, I always pull out my old expired ID first, because I don't want to look like some guy trying to act cool. Like, oh yeah, look at my care permit, I'm a tough guy, So even though they might say something about it, I pull out the expired one first. So anyway, I was in this gas station, so I did that. Handed it to her, and she was like, "Oh, this is expired. It's not good." And I was like, "Okay." So I took it back, put it in my wallet, and then got out my care permit, because it's not expired and it's still a state issued ID. Works just like a driver's license, except that you can't use it to drive, but works as an ID. So I hand that to her, and she looks at it, just stares at it for a minute, like she's trying to stare a hole through it. And then she looks up at me, she said, "This is for a gun." And I said, "Yes," kind of confused. And she looked at me again, she said, "This is for a gun." And I said, "Yes, it's still a state issued ID." And then she looked at me again and said, "This is for a gun." And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me," But then I said back to her, I said, "Are you gonna sell me it or not?" And she just kind of looked at me real angrily, and then took my money and rang it up, and then I walked out. It was one of the stranger experiences that I've had like that. She said the exact same thing to me 3 times in a row. Who does that? And I don't know, that was just crazy. That was just a really weird experience. But But what that brings me to that I wanted to talk about was that I can almost tell if someone is anti-gun strictly by how they say the word gun. Have you ever noticed that before in movies? I mean, I've been watching movies before, or TV, or just anything really, on TV especially. And whenever people say the word gun, you can tell how they feel about guns by the word they say it. They always put emphasis on G. It's always like gun. You know, they'll say, "Why would you need a gun to do that?" You know, they always say it like that. You know, like they want you to think that by hearing, when you hear that, it's kind of like psychological warfare almost. When they say gun, they want it to sound like a bad thing, because when you say a word like that, it makes it sound like, ooh, it's a negative thing. It's kind of abrasive almost. It hurts a little bit to hear it being said. You know, so it gives you that. So if you don't really know anything about guns, it kind of makes you think, ooh, that's a bad word. That's not a word that you want to hear. You know, and that's something that just really frustrates me, and I hope people see that and pick up on that, you know. And it's just crazy. I mean, like, what was it to her that had a care permit? Why should she care? I mean, it's a totally legal thing. You know, what, if she never had anyone use a care permit as an ID before? You know, like, she's acted like she never even knew that something like that was possible, that someone would have an ID so that they can carry a firearm. I don't know. That was just crazy. It also reminds me of one thing that has always bothered me is how the anti-gun crowd, they like to label shooters. They like to label us, you know, in negative ways, about as extremists, or you know, psychos or wackos, or just reckless, dangerous people. You know, they love to put labels on us, and it seems like people who like to control you always want to put labels on you. They want to label you as this one thing, so that you'll feel like that's who you are, you know. And they want to control your behavior by making you think that that's who you are, and you know, you can't do anything else. You're just this person, you know. You can just carry that through life, that you're an extremist, or you're this, or a hippie, or whatever. You know, people are just people. You know, people have different interests. You know, I like guns, but I also like lots of other things. You know, I have lots of interests. Guns is just part. It's a big part, but it's just part of who I am. You know, and I just don't like it when people label people. I mean, I get that. You know, you put labels on things so that you can kind of understand them better. But a lot of times a label doesn't really help you understand something. When you try to label something that's complicated, I mean, if you're dividing something in your house, and you have a bin where you're going to put all your CDs, another bin where you're going to put all your vinyl records, you know, if you label it CDs or label it records, like, that makes sense. You know, now you understand, you know what's in each of those bins. But when you try to label something as complex as a person, you know, you're basically just going to confuse yourself, because there are very, very few people who just 100% meet some type of just label, just a simple one word or two word even label, unless they are trying to, you know, unless they already are aware of that label that's out there, you know, like hippie or redneck or hipster, or all these different labels that people put onto each other. There are people who actually seek these out, and they want to become these different labels instead of just being an authentic representation of themselves, which is definitely the way to go. But speaking of records, one thing I was gonna talk about, and is that vinyl records is actually one of my other interests other than guns. I like to talk about some things, you know, other than guns occasionally on the radio shows, and that was something I was gonna let you guys know, that that's another thing that I collect other than guns, is vinyl records, because I absolutely love music. You know, I'm a big music fan, and I just recently, probably in the past, I don't know, year or so, I just really got into collecting records. I started it started out first with, I was in The Great Escape looking for some old SNES games, and I saw the records in there, and I was thinking, you know, it'd be kind of cool to have Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl. It'd just be kind of cool just to have it, you know, I don't know, just have it like on display or something, even though I didn't even have a record player at the time. So I asked the guy if they had it, and sure enough, you know, he actually had a really nice copy of it. One, it was, of course, it was one that was released in the '80s, but it's still in really good shape. Had the barcode and everything on the back. So I bought that, and I started thinking, I need to get a record player so I can play this thing, you know. And then I remembered that my girlfriend had this record player that she had got from her uncle, and so I went into stores and got it out and hooked it up and you know, and played the thing, and I was like, wow, this is really neat, you know, this is just really cool. So then I started buying more. I bought Led Zeppelin 4, I think it was the second one I bought, and then I just went crazy from there. You know, I bought a bunch. I probably have, I don't know, 150, 200 now, you know. And but one thing I was gonna do is, I thought every radio show, at least the ones that I do by myself, where I don't have a guest, I would like to recommend a record that it's all, I'm going to recommend a record that I have, that I own, and that is one of my favorites. Because I do have some records that I just got from where I bought, like a lot of them, you know, and I'm really not that crazy about, you know, but as far as the records that I have that are just really special to me, that I just really like and enjoy and just think are great albums. Not necessarily in any type of order, but I'm just gonna recommend one every time I do this. So the one for this time is the album "Stand Up" by Jethro Tull. That is a great album. I recommend anyone, if that's your style of music, if you haven't heard that, just get that thing, look it up on YouTube, figure out a way to listen to it, start to finish, and play it. I mean, it's great. It's a great album, but I think that it's important to be well versed in different things. I think it's healthy to not just focus in on one specific hobby. You know, like, I absolutely love guns, but I don't think it would necessarily be healthy if everything I did was guns. You know, my whole world was guns, because it kind of narrows your perspective. You know, like, you're not gonna understand. Like, I understand guns better by understanding other things, because, you know, the way that we understand things in our world is perspective based on other things. So if you're only interested in one thing, then your perspective is not going to be as good as it would have been. So I think it's important to have lots of different interests and hobbies, you know, and you know, just kind of be I think being a jack of all trades, I think, is a good thing. But anyways, I guess that's about all I wanted to talk about, and you know, I hope you guys are you know, still enjoying the videos. You know, we're still getting in some pretty neat guns occasionally. You know, we just did the LC9S. I hope you guys saw that video. That's an astounding improvement that they made on that gun. They took that gun from being something that I wasn't interested in at all to being one of the most interesting single stack 9mm on the market right now. I mean, that trigger is just, well, I'm not gonna say the trigger is just amazing, because it's not. I mean, it's really not that different from the other single stack 9s, but they made the trigger as good as the other single stack 9s, which then forced me to realize that the other aspects of the gun makes it almost better than some of the other single stack 9s, because it's so small. I didn't even realize how much smaller it was than a lot of the other single stack 9s, because the trigger was so bad. I didn't even see it as a realistic contender, you know. So they really made big improvement on that thing. So I hope you guys check that video out. That's a neat gun. Me and Dad are gonna have to fight over that one probably. No, I'm just kidding. He's actually made that one his carry gun, you know. So I may try to get one though at some point. But anyways, I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much. And you know, I'm still new at this. You know, I'm still new at the whole radio show thing and doing the videos and stuff. I've been in some of the videos, of course, throughout the years occasionally. But actually doing some of my own actual videos has been there's definitely a learning curve, that's for sure. It's a lot harder than it looks to get on camera without any edit points and just be able to just talk for 10 minutes. You know, there's all these great things that I think I'm going to talk about, and then I forget most of them, So there will be a process, definitely, of me getting comfortable in front of the camera, but I think it'll come eventually. I just try to remember, tell myself, it doesn't really matter, really. Anyways, it's all for fun, it's just so I just get out there and just try to do it, But still, I'm still going to be a little nervous and not as good at formulating my opinions and all that kind of thing, because it's really difficult to focus on two things at once. And when you're just having a conversation with someone, it's much easier to think about what you're trying to say and say it how you want to say it, because all you have to worry about is just saying what you're trying to say to that person. But whenever you're doing it on audio recording, the radio, or on video, there's other things that you're thinking about. When I'm talking right now, I'm thinking about the fact that I'm talking into a microphone that other people may be hearing, and that also there's things I don't want to say, there's things that I have to be careful about how I word it. It's more important if I'm having a conversation, if I just say something that I don't mean, I can just correct myself, but it's a little harder to do that sometimes when you're on camera or on the radio. And especially on camera, you're aware of the fact that your every movement is being watched, so it's a little bit unnerving. And I don't have the advantage that Dad has of being a teacher for so many years, where he's used to talking in front of a lot of people. But I think eventually I'll get the hang of it, so hopefully maybe you guys will be around long enough to see that happen. But anyways, I appreciate you guys listening to the radio show. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better on this one. I think you got a little closer to the microphone, so it should be better. But eventually I'll get some better equipment, and stuff like that. But for now, I'm just kind of keeping it simple. But anyways, appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you later.